Chapter 22 Best Laid Plans. Derek had forgotten what a bath felt like. "I have died and gone to heaven," he groaned as he sank back into the swirling warmth. Clouds of bubbles drifted over the enormous tub, and he lowered himself into the delicious heat until only his nose was out of the water. He could feel every bruised and aching muscle in his body starting to relax for the first time in days. Sitting up, he leaned back against the tiles, propping his broken arm, newly braced, on the edge. He motioned the attendant robot forward to scrub away the accumulated grime of his trek through this world. Derek simply luxuriated, letting the robot do it all. When it was over, he stepped into the fluffiest, thirstiest towel he could imagine, allowed the robot to dry him, and put on a warm robe. He felt soothed and comfortable as he went into the main room of the apartment. The main room was as large and plush as the bathroom had been. Far up in one of the taller buildings of the city, immense windows on three sides offered a view of the sweeping expanse of the Compass Tower, by far the largest edifice in the city. Mandelbrot was standing there, looking out at the landscape, along with another robot that Derek recognized as one of the supervisor units. The antennae-studded globe of a witness robot hovered nearby. "Master Derek, you are looking much better," Mandelbrot said, turning. Derek grinned. "A bath does wonders, doesn't it? And I can certainly say the same for you." The dings and dents in Mandelbrot's body had been smoothed, his external linkages straightened, and his body polished. The robot's optical circuits now gleamed brightly, and when he moved, servos no longer protested. "I am fully operational," Mandelbrot said. "Master Derek, this is Supervisor Beta, one of the control units for this robot city." "Beta," Derek nodded. "There are 100 or so questions I want to ask you." "I can understand that, Master Derek," the supervisor answered. "Mandelbrot has told me of your journey here. First, I should tell you that the med robots who examined you tell me that you have no serious internal injuries. Your arm has been reset, and a drug that accelerates the knitting of bones has been given to you. Most of your injuries are bruises and contusions that will heal with time. You should be fully recovered within the week. As for your companion, Mandelbrot has been serviced and repaired entirely from parts in city stocks." "For which we both thank you, but it's entirely possible that none of it would have been necessary in the first place had your central computer answered me." Derek saw the distress his comment gave Beta. The robot's eyes dimmed briefly and it backed away slightly. "You sent out a distress call," Derek continued, "but you wouldn't respond to our answer, either through contact via the original robot city or via the chemfets in my body. Had you done that, we might never have needed you to come here at all. And Ariel and I might never have argued," he thought, and with the image of her that put up in his mind, he felt again a deep sadness. "I have to call her, I have to apologize." "We deeply regret that, Master Derek," Beta was saying. "Then why? It doesn't make sense to ask for help and then ignore someone answering it." Beta gave an oddly human shrug. "I agree with you, Master Derek. In explanation, all I can tell you is that the city was to be self-sufficient. There were instructions against direct contact with the original robot city, but that does not explain why we would not respond to a human's inquiry. My fellow supervisors and I have conferred, and we assume the reason was a command in the central computer's programming. When the rogue destroyed the central computer, it also wrecked that portion of the backup units. None of the supervisors had been activated at that time. As you can see, the city is not very large or complex yet." Beta waved a glistening hand to the cluster of buildings below them. "There was no need to disperse city control. I cannot answer your question at this time, though we are attempting to reconstruct as much of the central computer's core memory as possible. If we learn more, I will inform you." It was Avery, Derek said with certainty. He rubbed his damp hair with the towel. He has the key to perihelion. He would have come here and reprogrammed the central computer. That is possible. There is no way to be certain. Dr. Avery may still be in the city, Mandelbrot said to the supervisor. In that case, Master Derek is still in danger. Beta gestured to the window in the horizon, where the city nudged up against what looked to be an endless forest. This city, as I said, is very small. I doubt that a human could be in the city and not be noticed. Your city let a rogue robot get in and destroy your central computer, Derek reminded Beta. The rogue has very special abilities, Beta answered. We have taken steps to ensure that it cannot do this kind of damage again. One of those steps was to activate myself and the 2 other supervisors so that city control no longer resides only in one place. As you can see, a witness robot accompanies each of us, coded with instructions to return immediately to a haven should the supervisor be attacked. That way, very little of the city's knowledge would be lost should the rogue manage to destroy one of us. There are other supervisor units waiting to take over should that happen. We are also building new hunter-seeker units with special detection devices. Great, but I doubt it'll help much. I'd make you a bet that this rogue came from Avery, Derek said. It has all his earmarks, inventive, cunning, and very, very dangerous. Which brings us to another problem. You said that this rogue leads the wolf creatures? Yes. It was seen directing a pack of them that had attacked workers on the edge of the city. They had given the city problems since the beginning, harassing our workers, clearing the forest. As we felt them to be hindering our directives, and to be dangerous both to ourselves and to humans who would stay here, the hunter-seekers were directed to find and kill them. Mandelbrot had swiveled to face Beta. No, it said, you cannot do that. I do not understand. All 3 of the laws of robotics demand it. By the 3rd law, we must protect our own existence. They have damaged and destroyed units of the city. By the 2nd law, we must obey the commands given to us by humans. They hinder us from following our basic programming. By the 1st law, we must above all protect humans, and these creatures are undeniably dangerous. They attacked Master Derek and would have killed him had you not been there. How can there be any question about this? Because it's not exactly that simple, Beta, Derek answered for Mandelbrot. They're not just creatures attacking you because you're here. I expect that they're protecting their home the same way I would. They're not just animals, Beta. They're sentient. They use tools. They have a language. Are you saying that they built the rogue? Derek sniffed. Not a chance. They're barely at Stone Age level. This rogue sounds more sophisticated than anything here. Then how did they get involved with the rogue? I don't know that, but I'm willing to bet that Avery had a hand in it somewhere. The thing to do now is to figure out how to proceed without harming the wolf creatures. There's a way to do that, I think. What do you want me to do? The first thing that has to be done is to inform all city units to view the wolf creatures as human. The 1st law applies to them as well. You are to do nothing that does them harm. Will you do that? You can do it yourself, Master Derek, Beta said. We have reprogrammed the city to respond to the chemfets in your body. This robot city is now under your direction. All you need to do is give us your orders. Derek had paid no attention to the chemfets, silent and useless so long. Now he opened his mind to the sub-miniature replicas of Robot City material. He could hear the city now, roaring in his blood. The flood of information was almost too much to comprehend, and he hastily closed down most of the channels, leaving only the direct links to the supervisor. You see, Master Derek? It was Beta, talking to him via the chemfets. All Robot City is now yours. Good. Derek nodded and went to the window, looking out over the rooftops and up to the summit of the compass tower. Then we'll let the rogue in if it wants in, he said. Avery didn't know that I would come here. Even a rogue has the 3 laws built into it. Avery might be able to design a robot capable of destroying other robots, but I find it hard to believe that even he could build a robot that could knowingly hurt a human. Silverside watched two of the cubs wrestling on the floor of Packhome. They rolled over and over on the dusty, broken stones, growling in high-pitched beast talk and nipping at each other with their sharp milk teeth. Finally, one of them yelped in real pain and lay on his back, paws up and throat bared in submission. It was ritual play, modeled after the adults. Silverside could hear one of the nursing mothers chuckling throatily as the victor gave a thin howl. She lunged and snapped at the triumphant pump from behind, and it screeched suddenly, leaping high into the air as the fur on its back ruffled in fright. The pup stumbled and fell, and the adults in the cavern laughed as it ran under Silverside's legs for safety. The pup peered out at them, half puzzled, half embarrassed. Silverside reached down and lifted it in her hands. "You see, the leader has to be ready for a new challenger," she said to it in soft kin speech. She stroked the soft fur and set the pup down again. The little one ran for its own mother. "It's always good to see the younglings playing," Lifecrier said to Silverside as the pup started to nurse. "It reminds you that even though our spirits leave here to go to the void, Old Mother will send them back again." Lifecrier licked Silverside's face affectionately. "Kenai will come back one day. She is not gone forever." "I am not concerned with Kenai," Silverside said. "She is dead and doesn't matter any more." It was only true. There were no emotions in her postronic matrix, only the priorities built into it by the three laws. Yet Silverside sensed that her uncaring words hurt Lifecrier, and she tried to explain it to the gray-furred kin. "All that concerns me is how she died and why, and what I must do to stop that from happening again. You do not understand me, Lifecrier. You cannot see what is happening inside me." They were all staring at her now. Lifecrier, the rest of the adult kin, the younglings. Their obvious respect and dependence on her stirred the boiling cauldron inside. Silverside felt pulled in a dozen different directions at once. Things had seemed very clear-cut and simple when she had hatched from the egg, but now the part of her imprinted with the kin hated the void being who ruled the walking stones. Yet another part of her yearned to find this creature who seemed more advanced than the kin, who could fashion creatures from shiny stone and have them do its bidding. Lifecrier backed away a step in deference to Silverside's rank. He lowered himself slightly to indicate subservience. "I don't understand Kenai's death," he said. "The void being could have killed me or any of the others. Yet it didn't. I saw it raise its hand and stop the walking stones from hurting the kin it had paralyzed. It held my head and did nothing but stroke it. It did not seem dangerous." "It killed Kenai," Silverside repeated. "I could smell its presence on her fur." "I know. Still." "The walking eyes seemed to obey it, you said. That would mean that the void being ranks higher than Central or these new supervisors." "I suppose." "Then the void being must be an enemy of Old Mother. It attacked you, even if it did not kill you. It saved the walking stones and left with them. It had a walking stone as a companion. It is an enemy." Silverside recited the facts in monotone. Around her the kin began to nod in agreement. Only Lifecrier seemed hesitant. Inside Silverside, synapses closed erratically. Her postronic mind no longer resembled that of any other robot. Her life among the kin had changed far more than her creator might have expected. In that sense, she truly was a rogue. No human standards worked for her any more. She was an alien, and she had overlaid the three laws with an alien morality. She could not disobey them, but her vision of them was skewed. "I must do what best protects us," she told Lifecrier. "Nothing has changed. We still cannot leave Packhome. My attempt to destroy Central only made it more difficult to damage the walking stones. You tell me that this void being is a being of flesh, and flesh is very fragile and very tasty. It had its knife stick, but even a sharp thing has teeth and claws. If the gods had to send it from the void, then we must have hurt the walking stones more than we know. Perhaps if we also kill the void being, then the Old Mother will have won. What do you think, Lifecrier? You're the one who knows the Old Mother best." "Silverside is the leader," Life Crier answered using Hun tongue. "If she says that the Old Mother wishes to kill the void being, then we will kill it." Chapter 23. Stalking the Gods. Derek knew what the supervisor robot wanted before Gamma entered the room. The Chemfets had told him, whispering into his mind. "We're going to have to change your name," he told the robot. "Gamma, it shows a definite lack of imagination, but it can wait. What's up?" "There are wolf creatures on the far hill, Master Derek. They are approaching the city boundaries." "I'm aware of it. They didn't give us much time, did they? Is everything ready?" There was little need to ask. He could have found out via the Chemfets, but somehow it seemed more reassuring to ask the supervisor. There was only so much information he could absorb from the flood. The Chemfets allowed him. Even if he wanted to control every function of the city, it would have been impossible. When the Chemfets injected him by his father had first asserted their presence, Derek had thought he was going insane. He couldn't control them, couldn't handle the eternal input. But he'd learned how to filter out most of it, learned to let the city take care of itself. The supervisors were invaluable, and the lesson Derek had been taught in the original robot city was to delegate his authority. It was the only way to remain sane. Derek yawned. He had tried to sleep that night, knowing the wolf creatures would come at night, but he'd been too wound up. He yawned again, forcing oxygen into his lungs. "Everything is set as you instructed, Master Derek." The supervisor robot, identical to its computer counterparts, Alpha and Beta, went to a balcony high up in a building near the compass tower. City lights gleamed red and yellow on the robot's burnished skin. Mandelbrot came from the next room and went onto the balcony of Derek. "I see them," Mandelbrot said. "There, just below the tree line. There are 6 or perhaps 7 of them." "Get your eyes fixed at last and you have to show off," Derek chided Mandelbrot jokingly, but the robot missed the humor entirely. "I'm sorry, Master Derek," he said. In retrospect it was the only reaction Derek should have expected, but Derek suddenly knew how much he missed human company. Ariel especially. I need to talk to her. Sometimes I feel half robot myself with the Chemfets chattering away inside. There had been no time to contact her. Derek had known the wolf creatures would come to the city again, and quickly. It was what Avery would have done. After all, the rogue had to be Avery's. It just made sense. He didn't think it would be much trouble dealing with it. In fact, his mood was rather jovial. Scrubbing away the filth of their journey through the forest and being in the city made him feel almost human again. He felt safe here, and with the resources of the city nothing was impossible. He'd be home again, soon. He'd see Ariel and patch up the rift caused by their fight. The rogue was not a problem. The wolf creatures he were more concerned about, but they should be easy enough too. A general reprogramming of the city, an understanding of their language so they could communicate, and some compromise could be reached. This stupid war with the city would end. Derek squinted into the night, cradling his sling in his good hand so that his injured arm wouldn't brush up against the railing. It was impossible for him to see anything at all. He couldn't even make out the individual trees, a kilometer and more away in the murk. The sky was overcast. Even if this world's 2 moons had been up, the reflected light would have never penetrated the cloud cover. "I told you they'd move," he said. "Can you see the rogue, Mandelbrot?" "No, Master Derek, I do not. But it could still be there, back in the trees." Derek shook his head. "No, not that one. Not if it's really the leader. If these beings are anything like the old wolves that pack animals, the leader would be first, or the others wouldn't follow. Remember Woolruff, always headlong into the fray?" Derek grimaced. "I suppose it's possible it's already among the buildings. Maybe in some other form. We might have missed it." He shrugged. The city was alert now. The Chemfets in his bloodstream fed him a continuous stream of information over the security channels. "Supervisor Gamma?" "Yes?" You're certain the robots will consider the wolf creatures human? You're certain they won't allow them to be harmed?" "You've instructed them so yourself, Master Derrick. If there were direct danger to you from one of them, I believe we would protect you first, as you most fit our program definition of human. But otherwise, yes, we will not harm them." "I can't stress that enough. The city can always build more robots. I don't care how many robots these wolf creatures might destroy. I don't want them hurt. We can find some other way to coexist with them."
"That is understood, Master Derrick. Mandelbrot has explained much to help us reinforce your orders."
Derrick could feel adrenaline building inside him. He wanted to run back into the room and out to the edge of the city. He wanted to be there. He'd made plans to do so, but the idea had distressed Alpha, the supervisor to whom he'd first broached the subject. "That would be extremely dangerous," the robot had said, very slowly and carefully. "I do not know that the laws would permit it. The rogue robot—" Derek could have argued. It hadn't seemed worth the trouble. Even Mandelbrot had agreed. The rogue was unknown and obviously dangerous. Despite Derek's assurances that even a rogue would follow the three laws, and thus be unable to harm him, all the robots had been noticeably pleased when he agreed to remain in the city. Okay, he'd play general this time, staying behind the lines and directing his forces. He noticed that the supervisors had also placed a cordon of hunter-seekers around his building, but he didn't comment on it. "Give me a visual, Gamma, and make sure we're recording. We're gonna need every scrap of sound these creatures make to start deciphering the language." The wall of the building directly across from them was a milky white, translucent plastic. Now it glowed with inner light, and a huge image of the forest gleamed there, red with enhanced infrared imaging. Derek could easily see the wolf creatures moving cautiously through the tall grasses toward the city. "Mandelbrot," he said, leaning forward slightly and pointing to the wolf in front of the pack, "isn't the old one from the glade? See, it has the same gray fur on the muzzle, the same markings." "I see him, Master Derek. He might be the best one to capture. He might remember that we didn't harm him last time. He might even cooperate. Gamma?"
"I have already so instructed all units, Master Derek."
"Good. I imagine we'll have to put most of them to sleep before they give up this attack. They seemed rather aggressive." Derek petted his arm and the bandages swaddling the claw wounds. He watched them moving slowly toward the city. "They're magnificent creatures in their own right," he said. "Look at them, so strong and sleek. We saw what they could do to a robot." He could see them now that several of them were wearing bright wire collars. Totems against the city, perhaps, or simply trophies of past victories. The sight made him nod. "Mandelbrot, you are absolutely right. They are human. Maybe if Woolruff were here." As the pack approached, Derek sent messages to the Chemfets. Several hunter-seekers advanced from the outbuildings of the city in a line. Half of them carried neural disruptors hastily built during the previous day. The computer models of the wolf creatures indicated that the disruptors would interfere with the electrical impulses of the wolf creatures' brains and cause mental confusion. The jury-rigged models had also been prone to leakage and had disabled more than one of the robots as well. As a backup, other hunter-seekers loaded with sedative darts also moved toward the invaders. Worker units waited to capture one or more of the creatures in hopes of learning to communicate with them. Derek didn't think they'd go quietly. He fully expected a bitter battle before the wolf creatures would be overcome. He was wrong. Halfway down the hill, the old one simply stopped. In full view, making no effort to hide himself, he rose on his hind legs, pointed to the hunter-seekers, and howled in that eerie language. The gesticulation needed no translation. It was obvious enough. "Come and get me." There were evidently certain universals when it came to body language. "Doesn't make any sense at all." Derek squinted at the meters-tall image of the wolf. "You'd think a pack animal would just attack."
"They are not animals," Mandelbrot reminded Derek.
Yeah, and I bet the rogues taught them a few sneaky tricks of its own. He grimaced. Well, he's obviously not going to come to us. Obviously they want the fight to come to them. Gamma, let's send the hunter-seekers forward. But it was not the fight they wanted, not at all. As the hunter-seekers advanced, the wolf creatures retreated, step by grudging step. They stayed out of range of the disruptors and the darts, though Derek suspected that was accident rather than anything else. Derek tried direct communication to the hunter-seekers, hoping they might understand the tone of his voice if not the words. They simply howled back at it. He sent an unarmed worker forward, arms outstretched peacefully. When it reached the pack, they tore it apart. At last, frustrated, he sent the hunter-seekers forward at a quick trot. The wolf creatures melted back into the woods, and Derek called the hunter-seekers back. As a confrontation, it was an elusive, aggravating thing. As an effort to solve the conflict, it was an utter failure. Frost, Derek muttered as the wall across the street went dark again and the city lights reasserted themselves. Now just what in space was that intended to prove? Silverside listened to the chorus of head voices, waiting. She was just to the south of the city, having circled halfway around it from Packhome. Already she could hear the alarm spreading as Life-Crier showed himself and the other kin at the edge of the forest to the west, and she could hear the new voice that directed the city functions, instructing even the triumvirate of supervisors. The God being. The one of flesh, not stone. The city was stupid. The walking stones had not learned. They had expected the kin to attack the same way they always had, as if they could not create new tactics. She could hear the God being telling the hunters to move forward, speaking to them in the void tongue they both shared. "Do not kill them," it said. "Capture the old one." Silverside growled at that, pleased that she had cautioned Life-Crier only to show himself and to avoid an actual fight if he could. It was a first law decision. Silverside only knew that it felt right to her. Do not harm the wolf creatures. That was what the God being said, but Silverside wasn't sure she believed it. Silverside could not lie to herself. The old mother had made such a thing impossible for her, but the kin could. Flesh could lie, and the God being was flesh. The city's attention was on the kin now. It was time for her to move. She had tilted and canted the dodecahedral segments of her body so they reflected as little light as possible. Becoming a walking stone had not worked the last time. She knew that the city was now aware of her abilities, and would have taken precautions against that type of deception. Nor had the shape felt right to her. Still, the third law demanded that she protect her own existence, and to enter the city as kin would have been dangerous. The bird shape had served her well twice now. She would use it once more until she found this God being. Silverside's decision to accept the kin had given her a definite preference for their human shape. She was kin. She might enter the city as a bird, but she would meet this God being as kin. Silverside willed her body to change. She spread wide, dark wings and rose quietly toward the banked clouds. The God being would be near the Hill of Stars. She felt certain of that. The Hill of Stars was the heart of the city, and the God being would be placed there, perhaps in the hill itself, perhaps even in the rooms Central had used. Silverside banked and swooped, letting the wind lift her as she moved toward the glowing pyramid in the center of the city. Lights dimmed near the hill, then a brightness glimmered on the side of one of the buildings. Silverside brought her wings in, let herself drop lower as her optical circuit switched to a telephoto setting. Life-Crier! She could see the kin, their images projected on a building alongside the Hill of Stars. In her head the God being seemed puzzled by the kin's behavior, and it ordered the hunters forward. Silverside circled the area, her eyes searching. There, the God being stood on a balcony opposite the view of Life-Crier, with two walking stones standing alongside it. Silverside howled softly, banked and plummeted like a stone as the wall showing Life-Crier went suddenly dark. The wind whistled past her as she dropped in silence. A few meters above them she pulled up with a savage beating of wings. The walking stones noticed her at the same moment. Silverside changed instantly into kinform and dropped. The walking stone nearest her she picked up and hurled over the edge of the balcony. It clutched at her desperately, missed, and fell with a strange silence. The other walking stone, an odd one with mismatched arms, immediately planted itself between Silverside and the god being. It made no move towards Silverside, though she knew it would not let her pass. The god being was a strange creature, she thought, its face a pasty dead color, and its fur all gathered on the top of its head and nowhere else. It concealed its body behind some strange substance, so she could not even see its sex, and one arm was bound to its body. It had no claws, and its teeth seemed to be flat and dull like a plant-eater's. It smelled horrible, like some obscene cross between a dead walking stone and a tree walker. It hardly looked formidable enough to be leading the walking stones. And yet, Silverside was strangely fascinated by the creature. It was a being of flesh, and it ruled this world of technology. Find intelligence, her old programming had ordered. Silverside shook the feeling aside. Protect the kin. That was what the first law demanded. I challenge you, Silverside roared to the god being in Hun tongue, but it only shook its head, not understanding. I challenge you, god being, she said again, using the void tongue. The words felt odd coming from her throat, and yet they were strangely familiar at the same time. The god being reacted to her use of the void tongue, its eyes going wide and startled. Let us fight to decide who controls the walking stones. Silverside growled and shifted into the challenge stance, her hind legs gathered as if to leap, her claws extended. The walking stone in front of the god being began to move toward Silverside, and she snorted. It reached for her, and her jaw clamped round its arm, tearing savagely. It was like chewing on stone, but the grasp gave her leverage, and she flung the robot to one side. The god being backed away, trying to escape back inside the Hill of Stars, and Silverside moved to block it. No, she said, I will not allow you to run. We must fight. That is the way to decide this. There's no need to fight, the god being said. You will not fight me. You will move aside from the doorway. There was a tone of imperious command in its voice. Almost Silverside wanted to obey, and for just a moment her stance changed, becoming servile and submissive. But she shook her massive head and growled again in angry beast talk. Old mother sent me to save the kin. You kill them. We must fight. That is the way. The god being was shaking its pasty head. No, I've changed all that. I've told the city to stop. Back away now. You're a robot. You have to obey me. I am leader of the kin. I obey the will of the old mother. Who is the old mother? The god being asked, and Silverside could not believe its stupidity. How could it not know the old mother? Coming from the first beast, it must know her. But there was no time to question the god being. From the edges of her peripheral vision, Silverside caught movement, trebled movement. The walking stone she had flung aside was advancing toward her, and from inside the god being's cave in the Hill of Stars she could see two hunters running toward the ledge in their confrontation. Silverside howled in fury and faced the god being. You are afraid of me. I should be the leader. If you rule the city, then meet me. I will wait for you. She flung aside the hand the walking stone laid on her, and rushed to the edge of the ledge, knocking the god being down in her leap. It was certainly a fragile being, for it cried out in pain as she plummeted over the side. She willed herself to become the bird again, and swooped up and away. The walking stones had helped the god being to its feet, and they were watching her as she gained altitude. She watched them carefully to see if they aimed their awful fire at her, but the god being held them back. Howling her beast talk challenge once more, Silverside left the city. Landing in the forest, she resumed her preferred form, and sat down to wait. Well, that was certainly the longest chapter in a while. Also, we still have yet to see Ariel. It's very don't know. It's kind of odd. Anyway, there's just 2 more parts left. So I hope you've all enjoyed and have a good day. Bye!